Hugh Freeze and Auburn flip a pair of recruits from Alabama to Auburn. As of right now, currently in the 2026 class, they have the number 1 rated class in the country. Joe, I mean, look, I think when Hugh got announced as the next head coach at Auburn, people expected this kind of thing to happen, and he's doing exactly what people thought he would do, coming in and now has the number 7 class per 247 Sports at the current moment.
Yeah, adding Derek Smith this past weekend and flipping him, he's now their highest rated recruit per on 3. Huge
Derek
addition.
Smith today, the wide receiver. When Derek Smith today?
Yeah, sorry, 29th. My fault. That was today when they added Derek Smith. I don't know what date it is anymore. Still feels like it's last week. What I was trying to say, though, is that they're yet to get a 5-star, but they have been slowly chipping away and building and building and building on this class. And I think that it is to the definition of what makes Hugh Freeze such a great recruiter. I always love the reference that his recruiting background comes from when he was with Ed O and he was part of that original Ole Miss coaching staff when he wasn't the head coach, but he was on Ed O's staff. And it was always talked about how freaking aggressive he was as a recruiter. I think that this is just more and more proof of what he is continuing to build at Auburn, is building out a balanced class, building out and finding the right guys at key positions. And I think that the bigger part here, I know that Smith's listed as an athlete, but assuming he plays wide receiver, he keeps finding some really damn good receivers, some really freaking good receivers. There's a reason why I feel like in the next couple of years, Walker White, that this offense, Cam Coleman, that they're going to be really, really spreading the ball all over the field and be one of the harder offenses to keep up with.
9 players or 9 recruits in the top 150 is a really good job. Look, I think what he's been doing and what they can continue to build off of is a big deal. I think Auburn is about to break here. What do I mean by that? I think that Hugh has told the powers that be to be patient, that we're going to build through high school, and then when it's time to go in the portal, when we're ready, we'll go in the portal and start adding big-time pieces. Joe, we did our Auburn deep dive. I think defensively, I think everybody looks at a Hugh Freeze team and says, oh, man, what are they going to do with Peyton Thorne and offense? Completely ignore what they're doing in the front 7 defensively for this year. Joe, they're going to be a hell of an out. They're going to be a hell of a game this year, and that's why I look at Auburn and say, hey, man, you want to talk about welcome to the SEC? Yeah, face that front 7. I am so high on Auburn and what they've done there. They continue it with guys like Malik Autry. You go and get playmakers on the outside or even at safety like Eric Winters. So I look at them and say they're recruiting at a very high level. My grandfather warned me about what I'm about to say, but I got to say it before I give it back over to you here. My grandpappy used to say everything that you say before the word but is horseshit. It's not horseshit. I meant everything I just said. But I got to address this thing about people trolling Alabama. I understand. Listen, it is a big-time rivalry. The Iron Bowl is a big deal. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest rivalry in all of college sports. However, let's not act – I know that you flipped 2 kids from Alabama. I get it. Alabama still has the number 2 overall class. And I want people to understand, yes, what you did was fantastic. However, Alabama is not slowing down. So I saw it today. A lot of people were just like, oh, yeah, this is what you hire Hugh Freeze for. Yeah, it is what you hire Hugh Freeze for. But you don't have to put Alabama down because you flipped. They're still the number 2 overall class. Joe, by the way, they were the number 1 overall class until this happened today.
Well, and it's also not just Auburn fans. I mean, there's
the
LSU
nation.
Media,
Just call it what it is. The nation is saying it.
The LSU media personalities have also been pretty vocal about every time
one. Only one.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say here, though, is it's kind of lame. I will 100% champion Auburn, and I've got a point to add to the recruiting efforts in a second. But any of these fan bases, it's really freaking lame that Nick Saban's gone now. So every little tiny thing that happens in recruiting with Alabama, and it's going to happen, that they're going to have a bad game early next year, this upcoming season. And everyone's going to take their victory lap Because Saban's gone, and now it's easy to hate on them and to think that everything is burning and it's falling apart and that they're going to be a mess. Because we all, or not we all, those that hate Alabama as much as they do, that are massive Alabama haters, are looking for any excuse to hate even more. That's what's happening.
Right.
To get back to recruiting, though, Deuce Knight is supposed to be visiting soon. And as a huge Notre Dame fan, it really pains me to say this. I have a really bad feeling about that visit. And I think if they get Deuce Knight, that is going to be a real, like a really, really nice cherry on top in this recruiting class.
Well, and not only Auburn in the mix there. Oh, the kids from Mississippi, does Ole Miss get back in the swing of things with their NIL?
I don't think he's going to end up at Ole Miss.
Okay, fair.
If he decommits.
Okay, we also didn't think that Ole Miss would do what they did in NIL in the portal either. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Boy, I'm going to be unbearable if Hugh Freeze pulls off and flips that kid from Deuce Knight from Notre Dame. Just letting you know that.
That will be a 10-minute segment where I will not talk. I'm telling you that right now. I'm going to just mute myself. I'm going to listen, and we're going to move on to the next segment because –
wow. You better get ready.
I swear to God if that happens.
Hey, you will. You better get ready. Look, they're recruiting at a high level. I think the way that they're recruiting, you got to win up front. The only thing I would say here, Joe, they bring in a lot of really big-time defensive linemen. 3 defensive linemen from the top 100 is a big deal. That's how you win football games. Joe, I do question what they're doing on the offensive line. They do got 2 tackles, but, guys that might be, I don't want to say projects, but guys that may be, borderline, like maybe a year 2, year 3 guy, okay? So when you recruit on one side of the line of scrimmage at a really high level, you got to do it on both. And that's how you start separating yourself. The only thing I would say would be their offensive line probably needs to pick it up just a little bit.
Yeah, the O-line seems like that's like the one area that they've been lacking a little bit. It does seem like there's a lot of premier defensive talent from these past 2 classes. There's a lot of wide receivers, as I've alluded to. Skill position's really good, and Walker White, who they brought in at quarterback, and this potential for them to have Deuce Knight. It does now come down to this spot, though, where – and we've talked about this. We've talked about this a good bit. Like, where are the big-name offensive line recruits? I understand that it is hard to track down.
They're all going to 1 to 3 schools. You ready? They're either going to LSU, Notre Dame, Georgia/Ohio State. The big name ones.
Some of them are leaking to Texas, too.
Correct. Okay, fair. So 1 of 4 schools are getting the top elite offensive lineman. And I get that. You got to win on one of them. You got to get a premier left tackle. You got to get a premier guard, because if you don't, you're going to struggle. That's how teams beat you. That's how you're going to beat teams through this recruiting class, because their offensive line's not going to be better than what you have coming in on your D-line.
Well, and this is why I was fighting like all hell with you about the whole Notre Dame recruiting thing, and why I completely disagreed with you on it, is that other positions, receiver, some defensive positions, you can get away with mid to low tier 4 stars in developing them. If you're not getting a couple blue chippers every few years on offensive line and defensive line, you're not going to get to that next level. You're just not going to. It is a position that requires finding the most rare body type with the most rare movement skills and flexibility and explosiveness. It is just impossible to find 300-pounders that can move at the level that you need them to at offensive line and defensive line. That's why we see the best teams being the strongest at those position groups. It's why, again, I champion Notre Dame for their recruiting efforts, because they do well at those positions.
Boy,
but the point is, hold on. The point is, with Auburn, they need to start picking up one of these guys a cycle. I'm not saying you need to pull 5, 1 a cycle. Start picking up some bigger names at all.
Boy, you're going to have such a bad time when Deuce Knight flips.
I don't want to hear
it. Dude, you'll be at the top 10. And then you got to start asking yourself a legitimate question. I'm serious. Y'all going to keep getting mad at me, but you're going to have to. All right.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things, and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.